All right, looks like we've got a few people here in the webinar. Thanks for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you taking extra time to learn with us today. We'll give people just a couple more minutes to trickle in, and then we'll get started. We do like to make sure we get a lot of use out of the chat. So feel free to send any questions or anything you have during the webinar in the chat. We can see them, and we love interrupting Dylan to throw random questions at him. So let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, please interrupt. And we'll have Q&A section at the very end. So if we don't get to a question in the middle of the presentation, we'll cover it at the end. So.
All right, well, we have a lot of content today, so I say we go ahead and get started. I am Abby Pancoast. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at ObservePoint. And I'm here with Dylan Sellers and Mike Maziars, who you've all met many times before, and we'll hand it over to them in just a couple minutes. They are our foremost product experts at ObservePoint. Today, we're going to learn about using the ObservePoint API. If you are interested in learning more about the API, we will also have a workshop on this at Edge in September. So let us know if you have any requests for what's covered in that workshop, and we can see if we can integrate any additional content. So first, we'll go over a quick recap of what we reviewed in last TipJar. Then we'll talk about integrating with your BI platform. Our BI platform, our business intelligence platform, is Domo. And so that's what we'll be using today.
Correction there, I forgot that second bullet. It's actually, we're going to dive into the ObservePoint API. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I missed.
No problem. Let's go to the next slide.
So yeah, we're going to cover the platform like Abby was saying. But first, we're going to get into the API. That's what should have been on that second bullet. So overview, we'll talk about strategy with the API, use cases, and then we'll get into the specific use case of our API, which is integrating with the BI platform. So awesome.
Cool. So let's do a quick review of the last TipJar episode. We talked about cookie initiators and origin stories. You can go, perfect. These are patent pending features that launched just shortly before the last TipJar. And these are awesome because it helps you know exactly where a cookie or other technology originated on your website. So you're not scrolling through countless lines of code trying to figure out a cookie that isn't supposed to be there or is potentially misbehaving. If you have any questions about how to use this feature, it's pretty straightforward. You'll just go into the cookie inventory report and expand the cookie that you're investigating. So that means you'll just drill into the page details and then select any page to expand those cookie results. The last TipJar episode is available online. We'll also share the link here if you want to learn more about that. And I'll hand it over to Dylan and Mike.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Abby. And apologies for the agenda there. I need to.
No problem.
So utilizing the ObservePoint API, this is what that second bullet should have read. And we're going to dive. This is actually based on the feedback we got from our last TipJar. So we sent out a poll and talked about what do you guys want to see? And this is a super common request. And it's also one of my favorite requests because when the ObservePoint API really unlocks the full potential of the ObservePoint platform. And unlike a lot of other REST APIs for software products, I think ours is one of the most robust, and it's also it's very accessible. There's a lot of platforms that like lock down the endpoints and don't make them accessible to their customers to leverage or take advantage of. And we kind of take a different approach. We're very public with our endpoints. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with an API, I like to refer to it as the butler of the internet. And it's as if you came to ObservePoint's house, or let's say it's a lavish mansion, and we had this butler that came and opened the door, and you can go and ask that butler to retrieve information for you, to complete tasks for you. But not everyone can give the butler orders. So you need to authenticate or only authorize guests are able to leverage the API, leverage that butler. And while I think our API is quite robust and has limitless applications, there are limits to what the API can do, right? The butler will eventually get tired. He sometimes has to take time off. But the beauty of our API is it's basically available 24/7. But there may not be an endpoint for every single task that you dream up. And if there isn't an endpoint for something you're dreaming up or a use case that you need, we'd love to hear about it. So contact us, contact your success manager, contact our product team, and we'd love to hear about what endpoints we could create for you. In fact, you could drop some in the chat during this webinar. But that's the one caveat, is there are limits to the types of tasks that butler can accept. And but he's quite capable. So your ObservePoint butler is quite capable. So that's APIs. I want you to think about it as this butler that can take different requests and accomplish certain tasks for you and automate things. So an overview about ObservePoint API, and just APIs in general. Now I want to get into strategy a little bit. So when using your API, it's super critical that you define requirements first. So spend time figuring out, what are the questions you want to answer, or what are the tasks that you want to automate with the API, right? Imagine hiring a butler and not like really having anything for him to do, and having him just kind of twiddle his thumbs. We want to give the instructions or have specific requirements first, and that will help us be successful. So step one is define those requirements. Step two, if it's not going to be you, figure out who is that resource within your organization that's going to leverage the API. Typically, this is a more technical resource, someone that's familiar with scripting. JavaScripting is the only programming language you would need to know, but there are other languages you can basically write API calls in any language. And if you're really stuck, you can use like a ChatGPT or some other solution to help you write some of that code. I've used actually ChatGPT to write some of the code that we use for today's webinar, and you'll see that in a little bit. You'll want to explore the different strategy principle number 3 is explore the different technologies that you have access to in your organization. So you might, AWS Lambda is a really common one. Azure Functions is another one, and Google Apps Script. We use Google Apps Script here at ObservePoint pretty commonly. But there are other solutions out there and similar technologies that can basically run code on a server, run a script on a server that uses our API. So, and another application is to create webhooks. So look for those technologies that are capable of doing that for you within your organization. Figure out what you have access to. And then if it's not going to be you who is that technical resource, or sorry, if you don't have a technical resource, like let's say you don't have someone to rely on, I actually really encourage you to go and watch a JavaScript crash course, brush up your technical skills, and most importantly, to practice. And lean on our customer success team if you ever get stuck. We have very technical resources here that can be supportive. And they know our APIs, so take full advantage of the ObservePoint customer success team. So just a couple thoughts on strategy there. Now let's talk about some of those top API use cases. And we use the word REST API, just a fancy term for APIs that are available for consumption by our users. So one of those is custom alerts. And so we actually have done a lot to add new types of alerts throughout our platform, but we haven't covered every edge case on the planet. But with our API, you can come up with totally new alerts that aren't supported by our platform. One example I came up with the other day is, alert me when someone creates a new audit or journey and tell me who did it, right? You could have a script that hits an endpoint that checks all audits and journeys and says, hey, there's this new one this week, and here's the creator. We can do all that using the API. So just an example of a custom alert. Custom integration. So it's super common for customers to set up Slack, Jira, or Microsoft Teams integrations. But there are some other integrations that aren't like technically supported out of the box with us, and or maybe not as common. But we've built integrations for ServiceNow, for Asana, for WebEx Chat, and I think a host of others, but these are just the ones that came to mind for me. And so whatever the platform or service you want us to integrate with, it's possible to integrate with our API. It is, and we'd welcome the conversation on how to help you do that. CI/CD integration is another super common integration. It's powerful to be able to synchronize the testing of your website with releases, and so we can bake ObservePoint into your release process and your CI/CD pipeline, and we can do things like trigger all these audits or journeys after a given release. So We'll have to talk to you about that. We have some help documentation on that too on our help site. Custom reports, super common request. If there isn't a report that perfectly fits the mold, or maybe there's too much information, we can simplify it or customize it with by pushing data from our API to Google Sheet or to Microsoft Excel. We'll have an example of that today in our BI integration walkthrough. And then that is a means generally to the end of integrating with a BI platform. So you don't necessarily have to join the two together, but it is a really common application and really powerful. We'll get into that today. Okay, resources. I want to make sure you guys are just familiar with everything you have at your fingertips. So there's an API, there's a help doc called Getting Started with the ObservePoint API. That's the name of the title of it. And Abby is actually going to drop links to these in the chat. So you'll have access to these. So there's also API recipes. We basically built recipes, or what we're calling a recipe in a cookbook, where it gives you instructions on how to use the API to build something. So for examples of a recipe might be to extract all cookies from an audit, or to grab all the journey statuses over time. So there's different recipes that we built out and kind of made easier for you who are seeking to leverage the API more and want to know how to get started. And we've written those and they're ready and accessible to you. And if there's more recipes you want us to add, just reach out. CI/CD integration, there's a help doc on that as well. Then we have our academy. So the same academy where we have tutorials for onboarding new users, we have a section just on the REST API. So there's a training module there that you can access. Then our customer success team is one of those resources that you should be taking advantage of. We have your success manager, and we have a senior solutions architects or just solutions architects accessible that can help you build these, and would love to hop on the call. It really is truly self-serving for us to go and help you build one of these integrations, because we know that the more you get value out of the tool and the more integrated you are with our platform, the more you're going to love and appreciate and use ObservePoint, which comes back to us, right? So we're selfishly very interested, but we also see the incredible value that you'll get from being able to share this data with your organization and share ObservePoint. Okay, and then last is Edge. We are going to, we have an event at the end of September, and we do have a breakout session on APIs and a workshop. One of our customers, awesome customers, Sam Valin, will be there talking about her use case with API, and then we'll have a workshop. So if you had made zero progress since this webinar, but you came to Edge, you'd be able to sit down with our solutions architects, with myself, with other team members, and we could help you build something in that workshop together. And you could leverage all the resources in person. So check out Edge. There are resources online, and there's edge.observepoint.com where you can register. Okay, integrating with your BI platform. So now we're going to get into my pet project this past week, which has been building out our own BI integration within ObservePoint. And I wanted to go through the process myself. I didn't have anyone help me write code. I didn't have anyone help me with building the visualizations. I did it all myself because I wanted to learn and master this and be prepared to share it with you guys. So I'm going to walk you through what took me about 6 hours last week. It was about 1 hour of kind of planning requirements, documenting, okay, what's the data I want to collect? What are the questions I want to answer? About 2 hours of writing the scripts that actually pull the data in. About 1 hour of testing those scripts and modifying and tweaking and polishing. And then about 2 more hours of building the visualizations within Domo, which is our BI platform. So it took me about 6 hours to build what you're going to see today. I wanted to bring up this use case for the ObservePoint API because it's one of the most common use cases for integrating our platforms, and it's one of the most requested. It's very popular. So regardless of the business intelligence platform or BI platform that you use, whether it's Tableau or Power BI or Domo or any of those, the top ones, we're going to be able to integrate with those platforms. And we start by building a data set and going from there. I know we were going to send a poll. I think we'll send it soon if we haven't already, about what is the most common API BI platform that you guys use or will most likely use. And that's helpful for us to know, what's the technologies or the technologies you rely on. So go ahead and give us a reply to that poll. It will help us, potentially build better integrations in the future. So let's dive into strategy real quick about integrating through BI platforms. So Make sure to start with questions your stakeholders want to answer. Make sure you find the most common, I think finding the most common alerts or metrics that people point to when they look at ObservePoint, that's usually a great place to start. If you already have an alert subscribed to, it's probably important to your organization. So that's probably a metric you want to pull in. You should figure out if trended data is needed or not. This is a really important topic. It might seem simple, but most people, I think, see a lot of value in being able to show a trend line and show improvement over time. But if you don't need that trend line, then it does greatly simplify what we build. It makes it easier because instead of a trend line, we would just have the current snapshot of data. So consider that. We're going to show an example of trended data for today. And then the next step in your strategy or principle you should follow is to define those columns in the data set. So figure out, okay, if we have this massive table of columns and rows, what should those columns show? And if you do need data to be trended, then you're going to need a date and time column as part of that table, because you're going to need to be able to build a time series out of this. And you need to know when these audits completed. Okay, second to last principle, identify ObservePoint API endpoints, or the fourth step here is make sure you identify those endpoints, do the research. Not all endpoints are created equal. Some are more effective at getting information than others. I'm going to walk you through today how to actually identify endpoints and then go and build it. So that's the fun part where we get our hands dirty and we go and build something awesome. Okay, so we're going to get into implementation now, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of resources and show you what is going to be possible to build with the ObservePoint API. So here we go. I'm going to slide over here and just give you one more shout out about the getting started with the ObservePoint API help doc. Take note that there's specific instructions on how to authenticate. We use API key authentication here, and you're going to want to use an authorization header that's required. There's some other detail, which is probably more than we need to go into today, but there is links to our API docs and other tips and tricks on API. So please go here if you're getting started. Next, I'm going to show you what we built in Domo. So I wanted to call out, this is using ObservePoint's marketing sites. So we have the www subdomain, the edge.observepoint.com subdomain, and resources.observepoint.com subdomains for our marketing team manages. And I built this view just for marketing. If you look at the bottom left corner of my screen, you can see here that there's an observepoint.com kind of full site dashboard. And then I have it split into different audiences like marketing, customer success, products and engineering. And there's different parts of our site managed by different teams. It's likely the same in your organization, right? You might have a team managing blogs or careers pages, or you might have, rather than split up into sections of the site, you might have use cases. So you might have a privacy compliance, dashboard specifically for that team that's focused on unapproved technologies or cookie initiators. But in this case, I basically just took our marketing teams, some of the top things that they look for and they want to get alerts on. And I created trended data. And this is starting last week, so it's not going to have a massively long time series, but you should see similar results, or you could build similar results with more data. And what we have here is I have a pages section. So we have average page load time, the number of broken pages. You can see we identified some last week. We went and resolved them. We have a couple more to fix. Broken links. So you can see we had a few broken links on the page. We went and resolved the majority of those. You can see how that's trending over time. You can say I even put a little target here, say best practice is 0. We don't want any broken links. Console errors, these can be high impact, they could be low impact. So I put them in kind of a neutral orange color here. But we had actually an increase in console errors, and I looked into it. Most of them related to our video player, and we're going to be investigating those this week. So, but the target is to get that to 0. You can see for analytics, I was able to grab, the tag presence data for Google Tag Manager, which is our TMS at ObservePoint. And you can see here we have it on 95% of pages, and we can go and investigate the 5% that don't have it. But you can see here we're kind of in that sweet spot in the green, as I like to say. Same thing for GA4. It's the same pages overlapping there. Broken tags, you can see we have some broken tags on our site. Again, those are related to Vimeo, which I mentioned earlier that we're going to investigate. Duplicate web analytics, everything's looking good there, no duplicates. And then this journeys report is totally independent from the other data set, but we're able to pull in all the journeys that we have in our account. and show the statuses over time. So hopefully we see this go up and to the right in the green, and we see, action failures reduced to 0, and we see rule failures identifying problems that we actually we've been able to resolve after getting those insights, after getting that alert. And then I have a section for privacy compliance, making sure that our TMS is on every page. We use OneTrust, or sorry, not our TMS, but our CMP is on every page. We use OneTrust. We have no unapproved tags, no unapproved cookies. Everything's good. And if the one were to appear, we would see that surface and we'd see a spike in our reports. So that's just an overview of the dashboard and what's possible for us to build here. And I'm going to go now into kind of the underpinnings of this. So I actually have here's a Google Sheet, but you can have any kind of database host this data. You can see we have these tabs on the bottom. We have full site, marketing, customer success, product engineering, journeys, and then I have cookie ledger and tag ledger, which is something we want to build in the future. Basically having a list of, every single page and all the cookies on those pages. Didn't have time for this webinar to highlight that, but that's another powerful use case. But you can see here, I have a snapshot. I have a link to the audit, which we actually reference in our dashboard here in the top right corner. I could click to the latest run if I wanted to. The name of the audit, which isn't super valuable here. Average page load time, broken pages, links, etc. All the different metrics that I referenced here at the top. So it's that simple. All this data drives, all the data in that dashboard. The only other exception is the journeys data. So I have another table for journeys, and I have the run date, a link to that journey run, the name of the journey, and the status. And we're able to aggregate that and build this journey status over time visual. So just examples of what those data sets can look like and what we can pull in. Okay, so I have an audit that actually is where all this data was collected. So you do need to build these audits first, make sure they're scanning the right pages, make sure excluding pages that shouldn't be included. And I want to show you guys now, sorry, it's highlighting my screen because I have this dev tools open. I want to show you real fast, how would I go and find a metric and using your API? How would I go and identify an endpoint? So I think I'll use the example of, let's use the example of this use case overview, and we can do broken pages. So I'm actually going to go over to this tab here and go to the network ribbon, the dev tools. I'm going to clear it, and I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page. I guess I need to see how do I still don't remember the hotkey for refreshing a page. I think it's Command R. Probably Command R. I'll just not go full screen here for a second. Refresh. Okay, so when I refresh the page, what happens is we get, I'm gonna have to go back to our dev tools here. What happens is all the data that renders on that page gets loaded through the form of network requests. And at the top here, just a pro tip, you can select all, which is generally the default, or you can select fetch/XHR, and that will pull in network calls and generally will be our API calls. So then from here, I have these names of all the different endpoints that were pulled in. And if I wanted broken pages, there's a few different endpoints here I could check. I'm going to guess that this is going to be in something called overview, because that's the name of this report. I guess that's not quite right. Let me inspect another one. We could have several endpoints pulling in data to populate this page. And if I don't find it very quickly, I might, oh, here we go, page summary. There we go. So under page summary, you can see this endpoint. So here's the API endpoint, API v3 web audits. Here's the audit run, or sorry, the audit ID, and then the audit run ID, reports, and page summary. So this is the whole endpoint. It's a post request, and you're seeing we're getting a 200 status code. You can see an example of the payload. In this case, I have no filters applied, so just an empty payload. And then in the preview, you can see the data. So the meat here, like what we want you guys to see is how do I find an endpoint? And then how can I go to the preview to see if it contains the data I need? From here, I can see, yes, I do get that broken pages metric. And I also get a bunch of other data that could be valuable for pulling into our script. So like the average page load time is here as well, or the total number of pages scanned, or the pages with broken links. So all this is packed into one endpoint. So just an example of how you can find it through the UI. One of my favorite pro tips I teach people is I teach them how to come here, because they can fish for their own API endpoints. And they can rely on our documentation if they want, but they can also come here. So I think I have one last part to share, which is the actual script. So if anyone wants access to the script to see an example of the exact script I used to build this demo dashboard, go ahead and email me at dylan@observepoint.com. Maybe Abby, you can put that in the chat, dylan@observepoint.com. And I can send you a copy of the script just as an example. Don't worry about this API key. I'm going to go ahead and refresh it after this. So don't even bother trying to use that for something malicious. I'll just refresh after the webinar. But here is here's the script. So we have for testing, I actually put in the item ID and run ID for this one. I'm using a webhook actually in this case. So I applied this webhook to the marketing audit. And so after the audit completes, it actually makes a bunch of API calls. It triggers that webhook, which makes a bunch of API calls, and it grabs information like the audit name, the link to the audit, the date and time of completion. It gives me page summary details, and then I break those out into different values like page total, broken link count, broken page count, average page load time, all those metrics we just looked at inside the endpoint. There are more metrics that I pulled in here using different endpoints, and you can see examples of those here. And then I have some logic to, basically once I have this data, push it into an array. And then once it's kind of in that nice, beautiful array of data, a table, then I push it into the Google Sheet. And where this really isn't that many lines of code, as you notice. And I was able to use ChatGPT to write some functions like replace and append rows or append this data. So there's lots of cool things you can do with this example. And I'd love to share with you guys afterwards if you want a copy. And I'd love to, again, personalize this for you. So contact our success team, work with us, because we'd love to help you get resources and get going on this. So on that note, I'm going to, go through a couple of pages here. Here we go. I'm going to share this challenge, this invite to wrap up today, which is start planning your BI integration, contact your success manager about next steps. They will be able to put this on your success plan, on your roadmap of things to accomplish, and they can bring in resources on our side and help you with resources on your side and coordinate with them to build an awesome dashboard. So I hope this was valuable for you guys today to give you a taste of what is possible with our API and give you a little bit, just a crash course in how to go and find an endpoint to see what some of those scripts might look like, how they're not, hopefully too intense. And again, I spent about 2 hours building it myself, the script, 1 hour, tweaking it. So 3 hours total building this to build that data set. And then from there, the visualization was just, me kind of having fun afterwards and designing. So it's not going to be a huge time consumer, but it's going to drive a lot of value for you and your organization. So that's my challenge. We're going to leave it to Q&A at the end. I know we have had some questions throughout the session, so we'll start with those, and feel free to add more questions in the chat. And we may have answered some questions already, which is great.
We did have a question from David Nelson that Mike answered, but do we want to talk about that a little bit more, some of the other possibilities?
Yeah, David asked, you said perhaps this is more low tech than what is being shared, but is it possible to automate this data being sent to a Google Sheet? Is it possible? Yes. So this was completely automated, the delivery to the Google Sheet using webhooks. And you don't have to use webhooks. Actually, you can switch from a webhook method to just a pull method where like every day you pull a snapshot of the data. They're both viable options. David, you said with our tech stack, I would likely leverage that with Tableau, desktop, or Databox. So that's perfect. Yeah. So basically, whatever that data set is, or whatever that home for the data set is, it could be a database, a MySQL database. It could be Snowflake. It could be Google Sheets. Could be a AWS or DynamoDB data set. There's a lot of places that could host the data, and we're just basically plugging that into your BI platform, into Tableau. And Tableau absolutely has a Google Sheet connector. It'll have Microsoft Excel connectors. It'll have MySQL, Snowflake, and the rest. So great question. Totally viable. And there are other, basically any combination of database and visualization tool is possible. So Any other questions that you guys want to drop in the chat? We can hang out a little bit longer. So go ahead and drop any questions you have there. And thank you for joining, everyone. This has been great.
Thanks, everybody. If you want to learn more about the APIs, we'll have a really great breakout session at Edge this September. That will include an overview, a little bit more technical than maybe Dylan did today, and a hands-on workshop time so that you'll have some experts with you to help set something up if you're interested. If you have any questions about Edge, take a look at our website or go ahead and email me. I just put my email address in the chat.
Awesome. And if you guys need that in slow motion, we'll send out the recording afterwards. Reach out to us if you have trouble finding it. So
cool. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. You'll get an automated email from Zoom that has the recording link. We also always post these at resources.observepoint.com, and you can just search TipJar. But if you don't get that for some reason, please reach out to us.
awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.